Good morning, everyone. As you know, the theme of this year's ASU+GSV Summit is Learning at the Speed of Light, which is duly named because our new administration has been making changes at the speed of light, and in a way no one has ever seen before. Everyone who attends this summit, every year we come here because we are seeking innovation, breakthrough ideas, new solutions, because we all know the current system is not effectively serving our students. We may not agree on how to solve this problem, but we all have to agree that our current system is failing the majority of the students it serves, full stop. So let us all hold on to this truth as we enter this conversation with the 13th Secretary of the United States, Linda McMahon. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So Secretary McMahon, I have to start with the fact that you have had an incredible career and a track record of realizing groundbreaking achievements in a way that's never been done before in an industry that is not that favorable to women. Can you share some of the insights and highlights of your personal journey and what brings you to this experience that you're going to, from your background, that you're going to leverage in this new opportunity as Secretary?
Well, I'm not quite sure if you're asking me, was I ever a diva in WWE? That I was not. But I was the president and eventually the CEO of the company. My husband and I started it and built an incredible company that I'm very, very proud of. It is a global company today. It is traded on the New York Stock Exchange, and we started it, just the two of us, at a desk in our basement. So it was, I'd love to tell that story because when I was the administrator for SBA and I was talking to a lot of small business owners, and I said, look, I feel your pain. I know where you're coming from. I've taken risks. I've gone bankrupt. I've lost everything. I've rebuilt. So when I talk to you about being innovative and taking chances and taking risks, I mean that. And, if you don't fail sometime along the way, you really can't succeed. But what really got me into kind of in the education side was I was reading the newspaper one Sunday morning. I'm from Greenwich, Connecticut. I was reading the paper about the children were not meeting the levels of No Child Left Behind. That was during the Bush administration. I said, how can that be? This is Greenwich, Connecticut. This is one of the most affluent cities in the country. And I know the amount of taxes we pay for education, et cetera. So that was a Sunday. The next morning, I called the superintendent of school that was quoted in the paper. I wanted to come in and have a conversation with her and just say, how can I help? What can I do? I was just a concerned citizen, and she wouldn't talk to me. And she wouldn't schedule a meeting with me. And I thought, wow, and I tried a couple of times, and I just never had any success in doing that. So the governor of the state was a friend, and I called her, and I said, what is going on with education in Connecticut? And she said, well, if you really want to know, let me introduce you to a few people. One of them was a woman named Daisha Toll, who started Achievement First Charter Schools in Connecticut, and she introduced me to several people. I became a supporter of the school. And I attended some of the classes and watched some of the teachers who also came from Teach for America, which was another very innovative teaching program. And I was just very moved by what they were doing because they were actually bringing kids up to grade level very, very quickly. And the state of Connecticut was not really very favorable towards charter schools, still isn't today. But we saw the success. So that was kind of my entree into being very concerned about our education and then supporting more charter schools and more programs. So it's been a good ride, and who would have ever thought? Here I sit as the Secretary of Education, and when the President Trump asked me about this job, I told him, I said, well, sir, I don't come from the world of education. And he said, I'm looking for an executive. I'm looking for someone who has leadership and management skills because of what we need to do with education in our country. And he said, and you're the perfect fit for that.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, first of all, Daisha is phenomenal. She is a friend of the work and has done magnificent things, and tell me a wonderful story about how you've supported Achievement First and the kids. So, we really appreciate that. wanted to shift to all the changes happening right now with the US DOE. Every other country that we are competing with has a federalized education system. Given the states already control 90% of the education budgets and drive most of the decisions for their districts, how does dismantling the Department of Education move the dial for kids and help us compete with China and Singapore?
Yeah, I've been asked that question several times, and I've said, look, we haven't always had a Department of Education. It was actually voted on in 1979 under the Carter administration, really stood up in 1980. Since that time, we've spent over $3 trillion in education through the Department of Education, and we've seen our performance and our test scores continue to decline. We just simply aren't doing something right. And when I've talked to senators and other members on the Hill, when I've talked to educators and just said, we've got to be innovative, we've got to be creative. We are not addressing the needs of these children. We're not teaching them to read. How can we do that more effectively? Do we get back to basics? Should we teach more with phonics and memorization for math tables and things like that? And I've been touring some charter schools. I went to a couple in Florida and saw some of those programs. But I'm also interested, in all of the new technology. I'm sure none of you in here has any idea about any of that. But I'm just very, very interested in a lot of the new technology that I think can stimulate kids. We've just gotten to a point that we just can't keep going along doing what we're doing. Let's shake it up. Let's do something different. And it's not through bureaucracy in Washington. That is not where it happens. And I'll take just a little sidestep. Someone was asking me, I believe in an interview, and they were saying, look, we're really worried about our special needs kids with taking down, moving some of the departments that are in education, back to other areas. And it said, what's going to happen, to these children? And I said, that funding isn't stopping. The Title I funding isn't stopping. All of that is, at the very least, the same. It may shift to a different agency. And I said, but let me ask you this. I said, does a teacher that is working with that special needs child in the classroom and working with parents have a better idea of what that child needs, or me sitting in my office in Washington, D.C.? I think the answer to that is incredibly clear.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And I think that's what's so amazing about this group that you're speaking to is that we're all committed to doing what is right and best for students, and I know you are as well. And I think the questions we have around what happens as the department changes its function. So when authority starts going back to the states and some of that oversight function as well, how do you anticipate that will impact some of those key programs that in the past have participated in funding programs to states, and as the states take on their rightful role, because they are, in fact, the first place that education starts?
Well, it's very interesting that the states, and I think you mentioned this, Phyllis, is that 90% of the education budget now comes from the states. Only 10% comes from Washington, D.C. So, and imagine how much of that 10% is really tied up in bureaucracy and overhead that, if we eliminated that, could go to the states, or at least a good portion of that could go to the states to have more programs directly for children that are in schools. And that really is the president's goal, is to eliminate the bureaucracy. I heard a negative comment about taking down the Department of Education, but the words that were used were, the president wants to get rid of education. I'm saying, well, I don't think so. He is absolutely committed to every single child having equal access to an excellent education. And so that's what we are concerned about, is making sure that those dollars are funneling to the states. And when I've been asked, by Congress, who will very pointedly remind me that this cannot close, the Department of Education cannot close without an act of Congress or vote of Congress. And so I've been asked, how do you accomplish that? And I said, well, I really want to work with Congress. I want to have them partner with us so that they understand that what we really want to provide for the states are best practices and tools to help the states, so that when there is no longer that Department of Education, there are other agencies, et cetera, that will uphold and provide that.
So
Go ahead.
I do appreciate that in the bureaucracy, because there is certainly an opportunity to streamline. I think the more money we can get to students, the better we'll all be. I think the challenge is our country has not had a great track record across some states of ensuring that the students who need the resources the most get them. So I think what we're trying to understand, and I know there are some governors who want to ensure, who are, they want to take Title I and make them block grants, so they have flexibility to fund where they want. I think what we're trying to understand is how are you going to put guardrails around this to ensure that the students who need the most get the resources?
Well, if you look now, and that's an excellent question, and that is one that I'm asked often, and I don't have a magic answer to that at this moment. But what we have seen already are some of the great innovations that are taking place in many of the states in the country, and that is not because of the Department of Education, but that is because that local governors and local school superintendents and teachers and parents all working together. And I'm not saying it's one party or the other. I am just saying where there is that desire and that goal to bring in best practices. I mean, Governor Reynolds in Iowa has done some wonderful things. She's a strong school choice advocate and put together some very innovative programs. Governor DeSantis in Florida, Sarah Sanders, who's newly into Arkansas, trying to bring now in some programs that are going to work. Some governors are going to do this better than others, and that's just a fact. Some states will do better than others, and that's a fact. And so what we have to do is to make sure that we are encouraging, and I think the private sector, I think so many of you sitting in this room who are investing in innovation and in technology and helping develop it and wondering whether or not I should continue to invest in education, this is the time. This is the moment to do that, because as we pull down that bureaucracy, there could be gaps and holes that we need you to fill. And I would like to work with you and understand more of that. Even if I step away from education, I'm not letting go of this, because I think it is so important to our country. This is about our security, our economy, that next generation of growth. We will fail if we don't have the best educated, or at least comparably educated, and I'm striving for the best educated workforce, children around, in the world. And I think that should be all of our goals.
That's great.
That's great. And I'm glad you mentioned and acknowledged that all states are not, some states are going to knock it out of the park and others may not, which is another reason the Department of Education had IES, this research and development arm, to help ensure that there's accountability and transparency. And so, again, want to understand in this new era, how are you going to help use data, right, in a transparent way to understand where we should be investing our resources, where we should be driving accountability, and how we can systematize and scale the results?
Sure, and I would like to, continue to work with some technology advisors. There may be some people in this room who could really give us some good advice on this. As we are really looking at revamping IES, because as with any program, when it continues to grow, I've always called it mission creep. But suddenly you look around and you're going, well, why are we doing this? Why are we researching that? And we're ignoring this over here. So I think that there is a lot to look at with IES. But as a president and I've had a conversation, I've said, look, this is what keeps us honest, because it's comparing apples to apples everywhere. It is especially for NAEP. And I think especially for NAEP, and that is...
So we're going to keep NAEP?
Absolutely. And
all right.
Yes, and NAEP is something that we absolutely need to keep, because we do have to compare those apples to apples. And if we don't, states can kind of, they can be a little manipulative with their own results and their own testing, but I think it's a way that we keep everybody honest. But does NAEP need to get revised? I don't know that answer. I'm not a technology expert. But I would really be interested in hearing what we need to do. Can we measure differently? I know we're doing it now every other year, 4th and 8th grades. Is that still the model we ought to have? I just want to get the best results so that we can fine-tune best practices that we are offering to our states and the tools that we want to help them have, because that's really where we are now.
Great.
I'm jazzed about this.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
I love it. I think that everybody in this room is capable and willing to contribute in big ways to our success and our future. What would be some of the specific things that education entrepreneurs and tech entrepreneurs that are dedicating their entire career towards better results for students, how can they help during this transition and this new time that's coming in front of us? How can they participate?
Well, I think this is an example of one of the things that you can do, and continue to share your information. I wish that I could give you the blueprint of what the best technology answer would be for that, but I don't have that. But there are plenty of people in this room that do, and I think the fact that you are constantly being innovative and creative and working with schools and selling your product and your programs, AI development. I mean, how can we educate at the speed of light if we don't have the best technology around, to do that? I heard, I think it was a letter or a report that I heard this morning, I wish I could remember the source, but that there is a school system that's going to start making sure that first graders or even pre-Ks have A1 teaching, every year starting, that far down in the grades. And that's a wonderful thing. Kids are sponges. They just absorb everything. And so it wasn't all that long ago that we're going to have internet in our schools. Woo! Now, okay, let's see A1 and how can that be helpful? How can it be helpful in one-on-one instruction? How can it be helpful in absorbing, more information for those fast learners? It can be more one-on-one directed. And those are the kinds of things and innovations that I want to see continue to develop.
We have something similar. You helped start and be a part of the first charter school and its program there. I helped get the first charter school started in Florida. It's what made me passionate about education reform. How can school choice as a concept be beyond just a state model, but can be a national model for innovation? And how does that maybe play a role as the federal government thinks about its new role going forward to innovate and to, quite frankly, to inspire more school choice?
Well, I often say as I have opportunities to speak before audiences like this, and this doesn't make me a genius, but there is just not one size fits all for education. Children learn differently. Some are really able to be very adaptive, and so I think public schools, private schools, charter schools, homeschooling, whatever we can do to support and reach these kids, it's just wonderful. And it doesn't mean that they go full-time to one school. They may go to a public school part of the day, a private school to take a couple of courses. Later in the day, there could be offerings of technical development someplace else. And I think we just have to be open, to allow all of these different forms of education to come in. And that's what I mean when I talk about helping to provide best practices and tools to states. If I, were leaving any kind of a legacy, I hope that's kind of what I can do in a short period of time, and it won't be solved, but we can open the doors a bit more.
I'm glad you said that, because obviously, I was deeply involved in the charter school movement in Chicago. I believe in charter schools. I believe in public schools. I believe in private. I believe in all schools that are delivering for our kids. And we learned so much from the wide range of the diverse schools that we had in our portfolio. So it is about all schools that are delivering for our kids. One of the things I really do have to touch on is diversity. And I know, given your journey, your career journey in the industry you're in, coupled with the individuals that you help take from nothing to stardom. And let's admit, some of these folks did not fit in mainstream, right? But you do appreciate the importance and the power of diversity. And so wanted to understand, what role is diversity going to play in this new era? And if you can touch on the recent memo that was sent out on Friday. What are you all trying to accomplish?
So which memo?
This is the,
There were a lot of memos that went
oh,
out on
geez, I
Friday.
know, running at the speed of light. This is the DI, about DEI. And the DEI programs are a form of discrimination against one group of Americans to favor another based on identity characteristics. And I think the challenge, right, and the truth of it is, and I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and most of our district's funding is based on property taxes. And so what that means is that those who are living in really wealthy neighborhoods are getting a lot more money than the ones who are living in low-income areas. And we know there's a persistent achievement gap among Black and brown and low-income students. And so there has been a lot of resources directed as a result of that. So when we hear that, oh, DEI is a bad thing, it's confusing. And so help us understand why that memo was sent, what are we trying to accomplish here. In the spirit of serving all students, we want to ensure all of our kids have the opportunity to reach the American dream.
Well, thank you. That's I think discrimination is the bad thing. We shouldn't have discrimination anywhere, whether it's religious, whether it's race, whether it's sex. There should be no discrimination. Everyone should be treated equally, educated equally. And one of the things that you're talking about in states, which was, as I mentioned, relative to Greenwich, Connecticut, the achievement gap was the other thing that caught my attention in the article that I was reading about education in Connecticut. And, you know, funds are distributed in the states on a formulaic basis decided by the governors and the state legislators. So I think that that's where we have to really hone in and have governors and state legislators look at that across the board. And I know in my town of Greenwich, rightfully so, there's not as much funding that comes there as there are some in more of the inner cities, and that's correct. So we need to continue to focus on where these funds need to be spent, but making sure at the same time that we are treating everyone equally. We're not taking away the rights of anyone to serve the rights of another, that it is equal distribution of the law. And so I think that's the right thing.
And that's great. That's important, which is why the title, Title I and these grants are so important to keep intact, which you said are going to stick.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Title I funding, and I talked to the president about this. Title I funding and the
Pell Grants,
and the IDEA
yep.
funding. The Pell Grants they're not looking to be taken away because we understand that the funding is the good portion.
That's right. So overall, because I've been talking to some of your team, and I'm again, just the translation of this, because I think and we have a lot of educators out here too, who are
Thank you for that.
who are confused, right? A little confused, right? So when we talk about getting rid of or eradicating DEI, it sounds to me that what you're trying to accomplish is that you're ensuring that the inclusion efforts that are underway are not done to the point of excluding other groups. Does that make sense to me? So as we think about it, what's in and what's out, right? Like if there's a diverse scholarship programs, I know many of us have benefited from mentoring programs, cultural celebrations. Like, are those still a thing?
I really believe, like cultural celebrations, like Black History Month, it's not just about blacks, it's about our history.
About our country.
And if we're having, an Asian American group, well, it shouldn't just be Asian Americans. We should welcome everyone to come in and learn about that history and that diversity. So rather than being with exclusion, no, it's all about inclusion to all of it.
Thank you. So I feel very strongly about this issue as well. My wife and I adopted 2 boys from Haiti that now attend HBCUs and have been transformational in their life as young boys in integrating into this country. So my question would be around, and I understand the president has said some things around HBCUs and has strong support for those. So it may be around that issue. Is there any thought about how HBCUs and programs like that can continue to play a vital role to ensure all families and all students have an excellent opportunity going forward?
Sure, and in the president's first administration, that was one thing that he did focus on, was HBCUs, and there is no funding in any of the programs that I have seen or any of the talk that would reduce any of the funding to HBCUs. I had the privilege, I think it was like my second week in office, of meeting with President Vinson from Howard University, and I'm just excited about the fact that I'm not quite sure what the statute is, but I am on the board there, and I'm looking forward to my first board meeting and visiting, and I promised him I would visit some of the other colleges that were part of the HBCU system, because there's a perfect example. Sounds like it's about blacks, but it's not. It's about everyone. Enrollment is open to everyone, and some of the most successful and accomplished graduates that are coming out of HBCUs are other ethnicities other than black, and I think that's a real testament to show about that inclusion effort.
And we really appreciate your support of HBCUs. In fact, I've got to give a shout out to the summit because we have a new HBCU partnership this year with Florida USTA, and I think there are about 12 HBCU institutions here this year. So I'm sure they would love for you to have exposure to their programs as well.
Thank you. I'd love that.
That's great. So let's talk about what needs to change in our K-12 schools and higher ed systems to ensure we have the talent to compete. Because one of my pet peeves is that we celebrate this 82% graduation rate, and we have about 2/3 of our high school students who are never going to finish a 2 or 4 year degree, and so they're kind of in the wind, and there's no accountability, none, right, across our broader education system around that.
I was shocked. I think it was last week or the week before, that the valedictorian graduating from high school in the city of Hartford sued either the school or the city because she couldn't read. And she was a valedictorian, and so she brought a lawsuit to say, how could this possibly happen? You're graduating with me, I've got the highest grade average of my class, but I can't read. That says more about our education system, than anything. We really are not doing the right thing. We are not teaching basics. We are promoting students along who are not becoming proficient. I mean, I'm sure every educator in this room knows that by 3rd grade, you have to know how to read. Up until then, you're learning to read. But after 3rd grade, you're reading to learn. And if you cannot read from 3rd grade on, and you can't be proficient in reading, you cannot be successful in your other courses, in your other studies. And so we have to teach kids to read. Are we going back to basics? I visited a couple of charter schools in Florida a couple of weeks ago, and they were classical schools, and they were back to teaching phonics in their schools, and back to teaching more of kind of rote memorization and math, kind of the way I grew up reading and learning math, and there's some things you'll never forget, and that's your times tables. So I think we have to focus on some of those things that are kind of back to basics while we integrate our technology to make sure that we are not leaving these kids behind. And that's just the basics of education as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think, like it or not, we have to integrate technology. Because the World Economic Forum declared this year that the end of the industrial age has occurred, or industrial revolution has occurred, and we've entered now the intelligence age driven by rapid advancements in AI. There's a lot of conversations here about AI, quantum computing, and blockchain. And it's, as you know, placing a high demand on skill requirements, training, and preparation. And on the other side of all this, our corporations are saying there's a massive talent gap. So this is really, really important.
I'm such a strong proponent, and I know our time is winding down, but I'm such a strong proponent of workforce education in our schools, that we need, starting in middle schools, high schools, to even train towards our skills. Because we have to change our cultural thought process, that this is not just default education for those who might not can make it to college. I'm a big fan of any student who can have the opportunity, wants to go to college, and needs college for their career, doctors, lawyers, engineers, whatever that is. But there are many, many wonderful occupations that do not need a college degree. And I think we should be encouraging those students in that career development. I also like dual credits. You could be in high school and you could be taking a couple of courses that would count in a community college or towards a regular college that's skill-based. You know, we need engineers. Yes, we definitely need engineers. We need all of our STEM courses, but we need plumbers. We need electricians. We need HVAC folks, and they can make an incredible living and really contribute to our economy. And we can't ignore them, and we have to encourage them and make sure that we are developing education across every single level to the economic growth and success of our country and for those individuals.
That's great. Well, we really appreciate you being here today, Madam Secretary. One of the things I know that's always been a part of all political campaigns, those short, stubby little lines that tend to be there. You know, we've heard about Make America Great Again. I think this one should be about putting students first. So if you don't mind letting the President know that that's the new tagline. We'd like to put students first, and we're hoping that you'll be on board with that. I think you will. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.